good enough. We fought like crazy, and 7-9's not great, but through all the circumstances and everything that went on, maybe it's the best we could have done.
Boy, we were really close to being in the playoffs, and if anything, it just gives me an edge a little bit, and I'll want to make sure our teammates have that edge as we go to the off season and then get ready for next year. That, hey guys, these wins or losses are one play, and we got to work and prepare and grind with that understanding. And now we just got to look forward. It's hard to look back and say what could have been, but proud of the way we fought today and got the win.
Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer commenting on a 7-9 roller coaster season. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff, and welcome to Purple Daily. Welcome to 2021 and the off season, which should be a super compelling, at least in terms of like what they could do this off season and the draft. We've got you covered every single day here on Purple Daily. And just before we dive into Viking statements, we were just talking off microphone, and we've been just sort of texting back and forth the last couple of days. A huge thank you to everyone who discovered this show for the first time in 2020, because Judd and I are sort of old radio dogs, right? Like Judd's a newspaper guy, radio. We've done a radio show for 7 years.
Dog is a good term.
1500 ESPN and Score North. And in 2020, we made a pretty aggressive, and I'll use a buzzword, pivot to incorporate more YouTube and just be more podcast and YouTube friendly, in addition to finding us from 5 to 6 o'clock on AM 1500 Score North Radio in the Twin Cities.
Our culture changed.
Big culture change. Circle back. What are some other 2020 meeting words?
Back.
Pivot. I can't think of any more. But
Culture's my favorite.
Yeah, it's good. But a lot of people who have discovered us for the first time and sent us notes, we thank you very much. And we'll be sure to continue giving you daily Vikings discussion and entertainment. In fact, every Tuesday and Thursday, if not even more days, we're going to go with our How to Fix the Vikings series. And starting this week, it's coming up fast in 2 days, we are expanding Mackey and Judd's Write That Down segment to Purple Daily. So in addition to Write That Down predictions on Wednesdays on Mackey and Judd, we will make Vikings specific predictions every Wednesday on Purple Daily. We are the only show in America that actually keeps track of our predictions and holds each other accountable with batting averages and slaps each other upside the heads with how wrong we usually were with our predictions. So if you want to be part of Write That Down Purple Daily Edition, you can send me or Declan a DM on Twitter at Phil Mackey. My DMs are open. I don't know if yours are open, Declan, but
mine are open. My DMs are open.
You can slide into Declan's DMs,
DMs
especially if you're a beautiful woman.
Why am I not surprised that Declan's DMs are wide open?
It's gotten me some trouble sometimes, yes.
No, you're not really. That's surprising.
I don't know if trouble's the right word. That kind of sounds bad, but maybe trouble.
Trouble's a good word.
Yep. He's at Dex's tweets, DEXS tweets, and we'll get you scheduled in. I think we have an opening this Wednesday because this is the first time we're announcing this. So if you want to be the first one.
2 Wednesdays from now, we have one opening, I believe.
Okay.
I think we're booked for this week, but yes.
Cool. Awesome.
Send them in.
How about some Viking statements, boys?
Let's do it.
We'll go around the room until we run out of things to say about the Vikings. And if you guys want, you can, usually these are statements that kind of pertain to the game itself.
Yeah, not today.
I'm going more big picture here.
I'm all big picture.
Big victory yesterday.
Who cares about that game yesterday? That was just atrocious.
But the officials were great yesterday.
Oh, the officials were really on top of their game. They really showed up.
What did they see? It was a cornerback blitz or a safety blitz by the Lions, and it was just like a standard sack of Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
and the official insta throws a flag. Yeah. And by the way, the rule of not landing 100% on the body of a quarterback, that's almost impossible when you're running full speed. And it mostly applies to defensive linemen.
That's what I was going to say.
Cornerbacks.
It's for fat guys,
Cousins
not guys who are
skinnier
than Kirk Cousins. That's what made the call so hilarious. It's like there's more of a chance that the cornerback would get hurt by Kirk Cousins than vice versa.
I know, it's hilarious.
Anyway, all right.
Start with Judd.
Statement number 1. The Vikings, and Rick Spielman in particular, I guess, found gold in Justin Jefferson. And if the Vikings do not sit down starting today to design a large part of their offense and the philosophy by which it works for 2021 around Justin Jefferson, people should definitely lose their jobs this time next year. So, and I'm not talking about, because here's what I'm going to get now. You see the stats, they threw him the ball, yeah, but blah, 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 blah. The Vikings entered yesterday 8th, I believe, in the league in rushing attempts. Okay, that's attempts. 27th in the league in passing attempts. They are a run first. They rotate around Dalvin Cook offense. And then the things that come with it are all behind Dalvin Cook. All right. So my statement is no more. This needs to become largely, and I don't care how you find the protection for Cousins, you need to do it. It needs to become much more the Justin Jefferson show, with Dalvin playing a really important supporting role, but the script, to put it succinctly, should be flipped because Justin Jefferson is a special talent at an area where teams are constantly looking for special talents these days.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So Justin Jefferson winds up with 1,400 receiving yards on the nose, which is a big season for even like the best wide receivers in the league.
Yeah.
He only really played meaningful snaps in 14 of the 16 games, and he's a freaking rookie in a run-first offense.
Yes, this is incredible.
So he was targeted 41 fewer times than Stephon Diggs, and yet finished only 100 yards behind him, and wound up with 16 yards per reception, which is ridiculous. So Justin Jefferson, as great as he is, was only 18th in the NFL in targets. And on the Stephon Diggs front, if you want to go down and say, all right, was he right? Was he wrong? So Stephon Diggs last year with the Vikings was targeted 94 times. That number jumped to 166. He almost doubled his targets from last year to this year. And so from a selfish standpoint, it worked out for him. But I think people are so keyed in on how selfish Stephon Diggs has been in what he's been saying about the Vikings the last couple of years. If there's a pie chart of Stephon Diggs' intent, some of it is definitely selfishness. Some of it is like diva selfishness. But a large part of it is, if I could translate for him, this is not the way, going back to the 2019 Vikings philosophy, this is not the way to maximize your offensive output. You can't just be handoff, pass, handoff on 2nd and 1. You need to be more aggressive, taking shots and throwing the ball.
A 2nd and 15.
Right. And the Buffalo Bills offense is one of the best and most dangerous in the NFL, in large part because they targeted Stephon Diggs 166 times.
And what Stephon Diggs got upset about and eventually forced his way out is a cautionary tale when it comes to Justin Jefferson, right? So like the Vikings should heed what Diggs said still now and say, boy, we've replaced Diggs with a player who is probably as good and who knows, might exceed Diggs' abilities. We've got a player now. How can we keep him as happy as possible? And more importantly, for the team's success, how can you feature him?
Yep. All right, my statement for you guys here, the first statement out of the gate. I've been very hard on Kirk Cousins. I still have questions about if you put the whole thing on Kirk and you put the offense on Kirk and crunch time on Kirk. I have questions about just how much he can do in those moments. When the pressure is off, Kirk thrives. When the pressure is on, he's showing you some flashes against the Saints in the playoffs last year. So there are still questions, and we will talk about those things all off season. But my statement is, Kirk Cousins played the best football of his career after the bye week this year. And for the season, he winds up again with over 4,000 yards passing, a career high 35 touchdown passes, and I think only 2 interceptions after the bye week. So he was brilliant for the most part over the last 2.5 months of the season. He stepped up in a big way, and he helped drive the Vikings offense to 4th in total yardage on the season. So as much as I think there are still questions about him and how much money he makes, and I think some of the stats he puts up are sort of fake and hollow, there was nothing fake and hollow about the way he played in the second half of the season, and he does deserve major credit. By the way, behind an offensive line that still can't pass protect very well, especially interior in Dakota Dozier. We'll get to him at some point.
You're praising Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I did not see this being
number
your
one
first
guy.
statement.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I did not. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you're back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
And you guys can join the praise. I mean, I don't have to hit the next button to get to the next statement.
No, that's
or
fine.
am I just going to be on an island?
No, that's fine. It's fine. Kirk was, you know what? And Kirk did the same thing for the most part last year when he popped up and played great after struggling. Here's what I would like to see in 2021 from Kirk. Get off to a really good start.
Yeah. It's a slow starter.
Like just get off to a hot start. Okay.
Yeah, the 1-5 start wasn't all his fault, but the Falcons game, there were moments where
don't throw 10 picks.
The Titans, they could have put together a game winning drive.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, but for the most part, he was
anyway.
really
I'm
down the
sorry.
stretch.
I'm sorry. More praise than it is anything else.
So my first statement is, how does this happen? So I want to reference 2 like major statistical points here that were pointed out by Chris Thomason and 2 by Dave Campbell. So the Vikings finished 4th in the NFL in total offense. It's their highest ranking since 2004, when Dante basically should have won an MVP award if it wasn't for Peyton Manning breaking every passing record. It's their first top 10 ranking since Favre in 2009. So like this offense in total offense was the 4th best offense in the league. And then you look at total net yards. So the Vikings accumulated 6,292 total yards. And Vikings opponents accumulated 6,292 yards.
Wow.
The exact same amount of yards that they accumulated, they also allowed while having this top 10 offense. At the same time, Dalvin Cook, in establishing the run, has a great year, and I'm not trying to diminish that, but the constant establishing the run game, when you have someone like Justin Jefferson, who's emerging as the best rookie wide receiver the league's ever seen, Adam Thielen's still one of the top 10 wideouts in the league. Irv Smith, I think, even though he was underutilized, I think has potential to be a top 10 tight end. Like, there's talent all around this offense. And even though it finishes 4th in the league in total offense, it never really felt like it was a consistent top 10 offense. And I don't know if that's yards, inflating some of that, which we've seen from Kirk Cousins' career before. But it's just, I don't really understand how that happens.
Well, they were 4th in yards and 11th in points, which and this is just a really primitive assessment, but when you gain that many yards and you're outside the top 10 in points, there's something missing, right? There's something not clicking. And I would even go to this other primitive assessment of the offense. They're so reliant on Dalvin Cook because they run block better than they pass block, and so they just sort of trust it. They've also looked to acquire offensive linemen that run block in that way. I don't think they've looked to acquire offensive linemen for the purposes of Kirk Cousins dropping back. That's a whole nother philosophical discussion. But at its core, okay, when you hand the ball off to Dalvin Cook, you average 5 yards. When you let Kirk throw a pass, you average 8.5 yards. 8.5. Now that's not per completion, that's per attempt. When you drop back to, and I'll include sack yards in here. Average net yards per attempt, including sack yardage, 7.5. Okay. So when you drop back to throw, it's 7.5 yards on average. When you hand the ball off to Dalvin, it's 5 yards. You do the math. Now, I'm not saying that you should just drop back every single time. There is definitely a time and a place for running the ball. The Vikings, the reason, to Declan's point, the reason why the offense, even as good as it was at times, still feels like it's not operating at full strength is because they tend to lean on the run more than they should.
And they don't trust the pass. That's the problem. And the line can't protect. Kirk fumbles sometimes. So like, I mean, everything that I think the eye test gives us problems because the Vikings look like, and they do have the skilled position guys to be a big play, quick strike offense, but they don't really do it a lot.
Yep. I would say,
I think that's a fair thing
in
to
general.
say.
And this is a guy, you're looking at a guy who literally quit football in 8th grade. And so I'd never played the game. I'll throw that out there.
Can you play left guard?
Maybe, actually.
Seriously,
I've seen Dakota Dozier
That's
play.
one of my statements, but I'll get there.
So
Well, you can't. You're too small.
I think in
Sure, I
general,
got a chance.
when you look at rushing stats, they can be misleading because you can see, like, when a team runs for 100 yards, their record is this.
Right.
Well, what was it that built the lead to win the game? Oftentimes, it's not pounding the rock. You're pounding the rock to maintain a lead and milk clock in the second half, right?
Yes.
And the Vikings kind of do it the other way around. The Vikings start the game by running the ball, statistically 60% of their offensive snaps in the first quarter. And so they're looking to get the lead by running the ball and establishing the run and pounding the rock. And so I think, and maybe if you were to do it the other way around, maybe it would show that, listen, Kirk can't handle it, the offensive line can't handle it, and so this is the only way that they can do it. But I think you have to find out at some point. Your best way to maximize your offense is to throw the ball more than the Vikings do when you have the weapons that the Vikings have.
Yes.
But are they built to do that? Remains to be seen. But I don't. They haven't really given themselves a chance to. So,
Right, ball in Kirk's hands. Phil wants
let
it in
Kirk cook.
Phil wants
Let's
it in Kirk's
prove it
hands.
once and for all.
Give Kirk the opportunity to shine or completely fail and fall on his face. Statement 2 from me. Do not assume a defense can be rebuilt overnight. Okay? I understand that guys are scheduled. I'm not assuring things to come back. Hunter, Pierce, Kendricks. Some people think Barr will come back. I personally don't know about that one. But the point being is, I think there's this feeling that permeates some of the fan base, and I know it permeates the head coach's office, that my guys are back, we'll be fine. Those guys are older. Some of them have been hurt. In Hunter's case, he might want a substantial raise. And if he doesn't, he still has a neck problem he's coming off of. Mike Hughes, same thing. So I'm cautioning right now to say, before we all sit here the next 3 months and be like, well, the defense will be fine, they're all coming back, it'll be fine. This is not a league, as we have learned time and time again, gentlemen, where you simply run things back. Like, there's a danger in doing that. Yeah. And so there is work to be done here defensively, because I'm assuming as long as Zim is the head coach here, he's not going to change his philosophies. So I really don't think that the Vikings are going to become in 2021 this high-flying offense, and the defense is important, but not as important. I don't believe that for a second. So before we all just assume defense is back, it's fine, let's remember that that type of statement can be a very dangerous thing in a league where a lot changes year to year.
Yep, and I think to take what you said and take it another step, it's because we've heard from a lot of fans on Ventline and throughout the season that are, you guys, once the defensive players come back, the guys you just mentioned, and you combine it with this offense, and then whatever you can get in the first round, and if you can free up some free agency money, then we're talking Super Bowl again. And I don't know that it's that simple. I don't think it's like, listen, everything was perfect if you just replace, Armin Watts with Michael Pierce and Danielle Hunter, everything's going to be fine. I think you have to look at the guys that are coming back, and that's going to be a push forward. But then you have to dig a little bit deeper and look at schematics offensively, philosophy. Why aren't you better at drafting and developing pass blocking offensive linemen? Like, there's things beneath the surface that also need to be addressed. And then the most important thing of all is, let's say you're a little bit wrong on your assessment and Mike Zimmer is a little bit right, and that once his defensive guys do come back, now it's a top 10 defense again, combined with the steps they took forward in offense. I think the question becomes, is Mike Zimmer as a head coach capable of being a Super Bowl winning CEO of a 53-man roster? I think we know that he can coordinate a defense, and we know that he can scheme, and he can beat Drew Brees in a playoff game, and that's great. But for Mike Zimmer to be classified as an actual Super Bowl winning CEO of a 53-man roster, I think he has to be more involved in the offensive philosophy and strategy, even from 30,000 feet. And I don't know that he has that adjustment in him.
You're not going to get that.
But
you're not going to get that.
Name me a coach outside of maybe Mike Ditka in 1985, where he just said, listen, Buddy Ryan, you're the defensive guy. I'm the offensive guy. Like, it doesn't work that way anymore. You got to be more of a CEO, and that's the next evolution for Mike Zimmer. Otherwise, he'll be back to being a defensive coordinator somewhere in a year or two.
I think that internally they're going, the conversations are going to rotate around the fact that the belief is that they can repeat 2017. And I just don't know it's possible. And again, like, if Barr comes back, how good is he? I don't know. He's great now. I don't think that he is.
He's always been underachieving.
If Hunter comes back, if Hunter comes back, he's got a neck problem. Okay. So, like, you can't just assume he's fine. So I just think that if we just assume that that everyone coming back is going to fix what ailed the Vikings in 2020, that's a stretch to me.
All right. I'm going to keep this Mike Zimmer discussion going here. My next statement is, Mike Zimmer, even in his worst seasons, is a pretty damn good NFL head coach. The jury is still out on if he can be a great Super Bowl winning head coach, but his two train wreck seasons, quote unquote, were 2014 when he took over just an awful roster and they were drafting quarterbacks and they were just like in full transition from the Leslie Frazier regime, and they went 7-9, and that was his worst record up until this year when again they went 7-9.
Yep. So
in a 7-year career with the Minnesota Vikings, he's 64, 47-1. He's got 2 playoff wins, both over the Saints. There are far, far worse head coaches out there. So I just want to give Mike Zimmer his, like, in seasons where teams train wreck, oftentimes it's 4-12, 3-13, 2-14, and the Vikings are, under Mike Zimmer, 7-9. But on the other side of the coin, I am sick personally of good being good enough. This franchise needs to win a Super Bowl at some point, and so I'm not just going to pat Mike Zimmer on the back and on the head and Rick Spielman and say, hey, nice job. You avoided 3-13 for the umpteenth year in a row.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I will give credit that they don't train wreck and that they find a way to be competitive and they stay in the playoff hunt despite starting 1-5. And those are all good things. But I wonder if the Vikings have too much good and not enough great at some of these key spots.
3-13 sounded good to me. What are you talking about?
Sometimes you have to go
3-13, 2-14
to spark it.
I'm fine with it. No problem at all.
All right, my next statement is, can you please just get a guard? Can you go get a free agent guard? There's guards on the market this year, and now some of these guys, and this is from Spotrac.com, so I don't know if these guys are entering retirement. I don't know if they're coming off catastrophic injuries, but like obviously Joe Thuney.
This is the part of the show where Declan just names random fat guys off of the internet.
And they're all dead.
Yeah. Is this a relief pitcher for the Dodgers or a guard for the 49ers? You wouldn't know.
They're all dead and gone.
You know, Joe Thuney's probably going to get paid. He's probably the best guard out there right now. And he's been has had a great career in New England.
He's in his prime too, by the way. He's not even 30 yet.
He's 28 years old. He did make 14 AAV last year, so he's going to cost a lot. But other guards are out there. Lane Taylor is out there. Brandon Sheriff is out there. These are actually pretty competent, good guards that aren't named Drew Samia and that aren't named Dakota Dozier. Please get one guard. Just one competent guard is all I'm asking here. But Brian O'Neill is a solid tackle. Riley Reif, solid tackle. I don't know if Reif's coming back, but a solid player.
Yep.
Just patchwork it somewhere with a guard and don't put out poor Dakota Dozier, who looks like my 5th grade science teacher trying to block people. Just go pay a guard. And I know that's hard to do because your quarterback eats up a lot of money and your running back eats up a lot of your money. Figure out a way to find a free agent guard who is not complete dog bleep.
So is Cleveland staying at right guard then, or is he probably going to go to left tackle if Reif departs, or is O'Neill going to go to left tackle and Cleveland goes to right tackle? That's what I can't figure out yet.
The Reif thing is one of the first puzzle pieces to fall, right? Because you can save like $12 million or something by getting rid of him.
Well, and
but he's also a good left tackle.
He's due $5 million on, I believe, the 3rd day of the league year in March. So he'll be cut before then or not. So, we'll know pretty quickly with him.
This is the thing, this is the conundrum that you have right now. Do you want to free up cap space? Yes. But in order to free up cap space, you might have to get rid of a guy like Riley Reif. And now you've just opened up your most important offensive line position to a huge question mark.
Prepared to move there, or what's their contingency plan?
I have the Pro Football Focus tackle grades here if you want them real quick.
Yeah, we'll just Reif.
All right, let's see here.
He's probably not too bad.
So there were, it appears, 50, how many qualified tackles? There were 89 qualified tackles in the NFL this year. This is just overall grade.
Okay.
Riley Reif was 39th. So he was basically just a good, solid league average tackle.
That sounds right.
And Brian O'Neill, let's see here. Brian O'Neill was 24th.
Higher, yeah.
Okay.
So you have an above average guy, non-elite, and then you have an average guy. And honestly, if the 3 interior offensive linemen weren't such disasters or revolving doors in terms of who's even starting, I think you'd look at your tackles and say, listen, we got a couple guys who are average to above average. It'd be nice to have elite, it'd be nice to have a Trent Williams or something. But we'll take it. It exposes those guys when your interior is so bad.
Yep.
And when you have a non-mobile quarterback, instant pressure from the left guard spot a handful of times a game is problematic. So
don't get me started.
Fix it.
Don't get me started.
Back to Judd.
Statement 3. Dalvin Cook had one of the best seasons by a Viking running back in franchise history, despite the fact that he missed 2 games. He rushed for 1,557 yards with 16 touchdowns, and he also caught, and this is very important, 44 passes, okay? The statement is that's the bright spot. The not so bright spot is despite all of that production, the Vikings went 7-9. And so this sort of tells you the story of valuing things that players can do, but don't necessarily contribute to a major victory total. And I think that this is probably a very fair and indicative sign of the Vikings' philosophy and why offensively it doesn't really work consistently. You just basically used up, and I think that this is probably not a debatable statement. You just basically used up one of what's going to be the greatest years of Cook's career. But probably in 3 years or 2 years, he's going to start to decline, in part because of the production and the workload that he took on in 2020, right? So I think that there is a cautionary tale again to be told by the fact that you basically drove Dalvin Cook in 2020 into the ground, and he gave you everything in 14 games that he possibly had, and you still finished not one but 2 games below 500.
You know, since we're pulling all kinds of nuggets from the internet today here, just out of curiosity, because this feels very similar to the Adrian Peterson era, in that you've got this amazing, shiny, fast, powerful Ferrari in your backfield, right?
Yes, you do. Yep.
Hall of Fame bound. Adrian Peterson's a first ballot guy. And I think Dalvin Cook, if he keeps playing like this for like another 3 to 5 years, could also be on that trajectory. Like, he's playing at a Hall of Fame level if he just keeps doing this for a while.
Okay.
But in today's NFL, going back to like basically the early 2000s, it doesn't guarantee you victories like having a great offensive line does, or like having a great defensive line does, or having a great quarterback, right? It's more of a luxury item. And so I just wanted to go back and see, when Adrian Peterson really started to make actual money, how did the Vikings perform record-wise? And then I thought, wait a second, it doesn't really matter. Like, him making money is one thing. They also spent a top 10 pick on a running back, right?
Yes, he felt
So in terms of financial resources or top draft resources, when you're committing those things to a running back, what are your team records? Well, the Vikings, under the Adrian Peterson regime, they went 8-8, 10-6, 12-4 when they got to Brett Favre, and that was the first time they won playoff games.
Eureka!
Right? 6-10,
Yep.
3-13,
Yep.
10-6, no playoff win.
Yep.
5-10-1, and then his last year, I think was it 14? No, 14-15, 7-9.
Yep.
They did go 11-5 in 2015, and they should have won a playoff game, but Blair Walsh can't make a 27-yarder.
And guess who fumbled in that game in a very key situation?
He did. And then Dalvin Cook finally gets paid.
Great.
7-9. And so, you know, again, there's so many other things that go into it. Defense, having a good quarterback, but it's just, you pay a running back like that before you've taken care of your offensive line, before you've taken care of your pass rushers, before you've figured out, you know, quarterback in some of these cases. It's the backwards way of building a franchise.
Yes.
I think paying Dalvin Cook should have been a reward for already having a great offensive line. And now it kind of feels like Dalvin Cook is there to sort of bail out the offensive line.
Right, because the problem is they can actually run block, but pass protection's far more important.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you're masking the ineptitude of the line, which, by the way, is the fault of the people who built that line, right? And to your point, Cook bails them out, but it's not the right way to go about it.
You know, Alex Madison is not as good as Dalvin Cook. He's not even on the, like, Dalvin Cook is a tier 1 running back. Alex Madison, if given playing time, might be a tier 2 running back, right? Yep. Alex Madison, behind an average run blocking offensive line, averaged 4.5 yards per carry this year.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook was 5.
Does.
He is not as good as Dalvin Cook. He's not as explosive, not as dangerous, doesn't take up as much game planning. But if you were to tell me, you said Joe Thuney makes $14 million average annual value, Declan, I think you said Thuney makes 14.
Yep, 14.
If you're telling me I got $14 million to spend and I can have 2 above average tackles and I can spend that 14 to really shore up the middle of my line in pass protection and everything, but I have to sacrifice a star running back to do that, I probably make that trade-off. And that's even acknowledging how great the running back is.
You definitely do. Why?
But we do it backwards here for 15 years.
Why do you do it? Because of this. If you have sufficient pass protection, and let's say Cousins is just fine. Let's say he's damn good, okay? If you give him sufficient time to throw, okay? Tell me this. Do you prefer to have Dalvin Cook be the featured player in your offense, or let's say Cousins, Jefferson? Like, to me, it's not even close.
Yeah. If you had great pass blocking offensive line, Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen, and now the amazing dual tight end set of Tyler Conklin and Irv Smith.
I love Tyler Conklin.
Goodbye, Kyle Rudolph next year. I don't think you'd be lamenting the fact that you didn't have a top 3 running back.
Of course,
right?
you wouldn't.
You'd say, "Oh, it'd be really nice to have."
You would find guys that would be sufficient.
Yep.
That's all you do.
Yep.
Anyway,
so actually, you know what? My next statement, I'm gonna go further down this offensive line path, and it's actually another praise to Kirk Cousins. Okay, my guy, Kirk Cousins, the 4th quarter pharaoh. That's right, Captain Comeback himself. The secondary slayer, Kirk Cousins.
He tears apart bad teams. We know that.
Doing all these things behind, according to Pro Football Focus, the 28th ranked pass blocking unit in the NFL. And it's even worse when you extrapolate to the entire Mike Zimmer era. The Vikings offensive line in terms of pass protection, according to PFF, ranks 28th this year, 27th last year, 27th in 2018, 17th in 2017, 30th, 28th, and 23rd. Declan already said it. Find a damn guard. And I'll say it even more. Find anyone that can hold up for 3 seconds.
What if you
3 seconds, Declan's dating life. Can you hold up for 3 seconds, Dex?
Yeah.
3 seconds.
Wow.
And give the quarterback a little more time to operate. And then maybe schematically, the coaching staff might open up the gates to throw the ball more to guys like
You know,
Justin
my
Fields.
fear? My fear is that Garrett Bradbury can't really pass protect. Not consistently, at least.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a first-round pick.
I don't even
boys.
think it's a fair. I think it's just a reality.
Okay, but that's a first-round pick. Like, at least the guards are just off the scrap heap and bye. See you later. Garrett Bradbury is an investment of the first class.
Garrett Bradbury, man, we're just PFF is.
But this is really concerning. Like, this to me is the anchor of your line and a place at which the Vikings have traditionally found really good players.
38 qualified starting centers in the NFL this season.
That isn't going to be good. I can tell from your voice.
Where do you think Garrett Bradbury
You
ranked
should ask that.
among pass protectors?
38 qualified centers. Boy, since you said it that way, I'm going to say like 31.
In pass protection or overall?
Just pass
Pass
protection.
protection.
Like 35.
38th.
Oh my God.
He was dead
Dead
last.
last.
Are you serious?
So if you're tallying up at home, okay, the
I amend
Vikings,
my statement. I now know he can't pass protect.
the Vikings starting left guard Dakota Dozier ranked dead last overall among all left guards.
Yep.
And he allowed the most pressures. And Garrett Bradbury ranked dead last among pass protectors at center in the NFL this season. And you have a non-mobile quarterback.
Yeah.
Up the middle pressure, non-mobile quarterback.
And you used a first-round pick on that center.
Yeah. And so, again, to the Kirk Cousins conversation, well, why are you guys so hard on Kirk Cousins? Well, let's go away from that for a second. What I'm saying is it's actually, I think, easier to just find a mobile quarterback than it is to find 5 great offensive linemen. And the Vikings have sort of chosen the path
I agree with
of
that.
they need to find 5 great offensive linemen to protect their non-mobile quarterback.
No, that's the problem. They didn't. They chose the path of he'll get by.
Yeah. All right, Declan.
To defend my dating life here, just in the smallest
Just 3
amount.
seconds.
Just 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
It's kind
not
of like,
even a rodeo.
it's like you claim you are an eligible bachelor and you want to be changing, but you keep talking to girls from high school. Like, stop talking to the same girls from high school. Go find something else. Go find something that's more worthwhile that you can patchwork your life with.
But Dakota Dozier and I went to prom together.
Yeah,
It was
but go to
great.
Dozier and you kissed under the tree on the baseball field when you were 16 and you keep going back to her 10 years later. Move on. I don't have that issue. I want to make that very clear. Anyway, my next statement is, yes, Mike Zimmer deserves some criticism for the defense, but it's actually Rick Spielman. And I want a hat tip to Skull Reddit for finding this out. These are all the Vikings defensive draft picks from 2016 to 19. So I know guys like in this last year in Dantzler and Gladney might turn out okay, all right? But from 2016 to 19, these are all the defensive players the Vikings drafted. It's really not that long of a list. In the first round, Mike Hughes is the only one. Injured and honestly a bust. Like, I'm calling Mike Hughes a bust at this point.
He's a bust right now.
He's a bust. The only second round player they've taken in that time, Mackenzie Alexander, a decent player. You let him walk in free agency. No one in the third round. In the fourth round, you've drafted Jaleel Johnson, poor performer. Jalen Holmes, not good. Ben Gideon, not on the team. Fifth round, Kentrell Brothers and Cameron Smith, neither on the team. Sixth round, Armin Watts, Marcus Epps, and Ade Aruna. One of those guys is still on the team. And then a list of seventh rounders, too, who are no longer with the team. So basically, for 4 drafts, 16, 17, 18, 19, you basically have had nothing hit on a draft pick defensive-wise. So, yes, even though Mike Zimmer, I'm more criticizing him because I'm just shocked he wasn't able to come up with more schematic ways to make up for the lack of it, but I understand why he can't, as Judd's pointed out in Mackey and Judd today. But Rick Spielman does deserve blame for also picking these players that either Mackenzie Alexander's the only decent one, and it's not like Mackenzie Alexander's a star.
Zim's involved too, though.
Sure.
Those are his guys as well. So that's why after the Saints loss, it was really frustrating to hear Mike say, those weren't my guys. Well, actually, Mike, they are your guys.
Yeah.
So I would say they're both handcuffed at the hip or handcuffed at the wrist, obviously, for missing for 4 straight years of defensive players.
I agree with you.
Wow, that's an amazing list right there.
Well, and we give them praise for Hunter, right? They found him third round, correct? and we give them a ton of praise. So when they actually have the list, the Dex just went through of that many guys who didn't succeed. That's pretty damning.
And you're always going to have more whiffs than hits in a draft period. Like
Sure.
I'd like to see sort of,
For sure.
you know, what's a good batting average in the draft in terms of like finding starting caliber
But
players.
if you
It's
can
probably
find
20%
guys,
or something.
You got to find some guys, right?
So I'm out of statements we have a million things we're going to get into for the rest of the week and month. But Judd, any final statements from you here?
I'm good for now.
We'll save
I'm
them.
good for now. There's plenty more to dissect in the coming days as we again, for the umpteenth year, figure out how to fix the Vikings.
Yep. So
And no one will listen to us. That's the problem.
we're planning on keeping this thing going 7 days a week on Purple Daily all throughout the off season. And so Mondays starting next week, this week will be a little bit more of our normal schedule, kind of sort of molding into the new one. But on Mondays, you can expect mock draft Mondays and a draft related guest as we do deep dives into what the Vikings might do with their first round pick. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, how to fix the Vikings series. As long as it takes us, it might take us all the way up until training camp next year. On Wednesdays, write that down, migrates and expands to a Viking-centric Purple Daily edition. And then also Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we've got some stuff planned that we will roll out in the coming weeks. So thank you guys for hanging out with us all season and for jumping into the offseason with us. Those are your Viking statements on this Monday. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff, Purple Daily. See you tomorrow.